This afternoon, the first session here with Robin and I will be on repairs and rebuild, the construction side of the recovery process. We want to focus on why we're here, to get folks home quickly as possible, but fairly and equitably. That's the work of case management and other pieces of it, but the construction side needs to always stay focused as well. So the challenge is, how do we go about doing this? How do we get folks home, get their homes repaired or rebuilt, and do it quickly? And always bearing in mind safe, sanitary, and secure on the homes. And an additional feature that we've added, it's not an S, it kind of ruins the three S's, but functional. We look at functional as well. The question is, and Robin and I, in preparing for this, we did a little bit of
back and forth.
Back and forth, that's a good word. Debate on whether you need a construction manager or coordinator. Robin's question is, do you need one? Tell me why you don't need one.
Well, I don't know that you do. Our first disaster, we had 2 construction coordinators, so my assumption is in the next disaster that hit, we needed a construction coordinator, and we had to come up with, $40,000 to pay this person. So I contacted the Mennonites and I said, how come we need a construction manager? And they said, well, you don't. And I said, well, then how come we had 2 in 2003? They said, well, because you had them. So we used them. But we're quite capable of running our own show. And I said, okay. So in 2007, we had no construction coordinator. I pulled all the building permits and worked with the inspectors, but they did all the other work. So that was my question. Depending on what you have going on and what group you're working with, maybe you don't need a construction coordinator, but if your disaster is gigantic, maybe you do. But that was just some food for thought.
Do these committees, do you all have construction managers named? Yeah. How many do and how many do not?
So
do the ones that do not feel a need for it, or not necessarily?
Oh, here's the microphone. Here we go. I knew something was missing. Yeah, back
part
there.
Of the challenge becomes in the debate on whether you're going to have a construction manager is how are you going to do it? Are you going to use a volunteer member of your long-term recovery committee, not paid, not salaried, a volunteer member? Often many communities, a local builder, contractor, someone with expertise will step up and fill that role. Are you going to do it as a volunteer? If you do, can you define the workload expectations and demands you're putting on this volunteer and how you hope to retain that person? Are you going to hire staff? Hire a paid construction manager like Robin talked about. Do you have funding for it? How is that going to come together is a question. And again, now you can have a job description expectations because you've got salary and you can make that person work for you. Or do you go to one of your whoever your primary builders are in the community? Do you trust MDS or do you trust Habitat or whoever to be your construction manager? Do you let that go to the volunteer side?
Yeah, and I just having had the relationship with the Mennonites and with a couple other groups, I found them to be quite capable, and actually it kind of removed a layer. We had lost, I think, maybe 1,800 homes in the 2007 fires, so not as many as in the 2003, but also we weren't rebuilding all those homes, and you guys may be looking at a much different situation where you're doing a lot more construction.
Repair. Yeah,
with repair. So that coordination piece is probably critical. And there's a question back there for whoever's on the mic. So those are just some things to think about, especially if you were, for some reason, not have a lot of extra funds. I find a lot of these rebuild groups to be quite capable of doing that piece.
Just a quick thought, real quick. Gary Scoggin with Galveston County Recovers. But you said you didn't have a construction manager. You said, well, you wouldn't pull the permits, et cetera. So really, you were the construction manager as well as your other job. Is that a fair characterization?
Well, I mean, I suppose. Yeah. To some degree. I mean, I had know-how beforehand, so it wasn't difficult because we're in the construction business in real life. So I was able to have that know-how ahead of time, and the learning curve in the state of California and the county of San Diego to pull a building permit would be extremely challenging for any organization. So I did do that. But I think in Texas there is a lot more, specifically Texas, there's a lot more relaxed scenarios. Like sometimes you don't even have to be a contractor to build a house and things like that. So that's just, and it may not apply to this disaster that you guys are dealing with, but it could on another.
And that comes back, again, to job description. Permit puller and inspection scheduler, if they're not on job sites and approving prints and all that, they're maybe still not construction manager, they're just permit puller. So definition of the job description of what you folks are calling your construction manager, what the expectation of that person is, can be all over the place. Another thing to point out, if you're going to use volunteers, what is their commitment to the LTRC? Are they there just for a 3-month build period and then gone, or are they there for 5 years, 3 years?
For the haul.
For the long haul. You need to evaluate that before you let that job go to an outside volunteer.
Yeah, and one other thing that was on there, sometimes you'll have a local builder step up and say, oh, I want to coordinate, and they may be the most well-intended people in the world. But also one must use caution that a lot of times those contractors could be farming for work. And I just suggest using caution in that scenario because it happens. It's just happening on a small disaster where we're on now. Do-gooder, and then all of a sudden the do-gooder is no longer doing good, and he wants money, and he formed relationships with senior citizens that he's now overcharging, etc. So I would say use caution.
Develop a little sense of guilt, obligation.
Correct.
Pressure on the homeowners to think they owe this
person something, especially with your elderly crowd. So.
And I can speak to the difference that she mentioned. That had to be MDS on either role. And I've talked with my counterparts in other volunteer organizations. We prefer a construction manager. We are willing and we are capable and willing to do that for you if we're in your community. We've got people that can do it. We've got skilled folks. But we prefer to have someone local to be responsible because the time obligation it takes away from our volunteer pool. We can be more effective if you have the construction manager, if you do the permits and you do that process. Lets us build houses. If we're doing administrative work, it takes away from our effort, so it can be a negative to you in the net results of what we bring.
Yeah, could be.
It works. We are more than happy. I know Samaritan's Purse. I know
you're more than capable.
Others are more than capable. They've got the gifts and they're able. But if you're using them to do that, you're shorting yourself somewhere else.
Less nails being hammered.
Yes.
Oh, you want to talk about house plans?
Sure, go ahead.
So one of the things for the community recovery team in San Diego, we, with collaboration with the Mennonites and a great draftsman, we had 3 sets of plans drawn. And then we put them in at the county to where they were kind of master planned, so that when the time came to pull the permit, those plans were already engineered through the county, and so then it was just site specific to the lot. And that worked out really, really efficiently. And then the size of the house would basically, I think our biggest house was 1,364 square feet, and that'd probably be for a family of like 6 or 7. Otherwise, they would have just been in a little bit smaller, like a 864. We had one that was a 1-bedroom that we'd use for single people or a couple, like 620 square feet. So that was a really efficient way to do business also, to not be creating all these different sets of plans. Thankfully, most of they're small enough, the lots, you could do the grading that was necessary to get the house fit on the lot, so.
And different organizations who will come in and build for you might have different takes on that. MDS MDS has two sets of plans. We have a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom. We don't have a 1-bedroom plan. We are willing to build your plans, your 1-bedroom house. If you have that, we're willing to do that for you. Again, it distracts from our core abilities. Our volunteers who come year after year after year are used to that 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom, and they can put that one together in their sleep. You throw them a 1-bedroom house or a cabin size or something strange, slows down, got to study, got to learn how to build it. Listen to your volunteer group that's coming to build for you. If they'll say, I'll build anything, great. MDS would prefer, we'll do whatever you ask, but we prefer to do the 2 or 3. Again, you take away when you start plugging in.
Well, yeah, and you guys won't do anything. Like, they're not going to build a 4,000 square foot.
No.
Well, you could twist their arm every once in a while for a few things.
I put modest size.
He's covering himself.
Yeah. We have been part of some 2,500-foot houses. We built a 5-bedroom house for a family that had like 7 or 8 kids at home. It was deemed to be appropriate for them. We took our 3-bedroom plan, stuck 2 more bedrooms on the end, and extended the hallway, and yeah.
Budget planning. You go for this one.
Who does your budget planning? Construction manager? Where's that land? Do you have a finance committee in your LTRC? Do you have a finance sub? Do you slide that over to unmet needs? Does a case manager play with that to determine how much money this person's allocated? Who does budget planning on this house? And what all is included? Materials, and that you've got to go from the concrete and the excavation all the way to the chimney. It's a fairly extensive budget plan that you have to be able to work with. Think about who's going to do that for you, if you haven't already. Permit and inspection costs. This one is a mind blower, and I'll tell you, it makes a difference. Again, I'm going back to my MDS hat instead of my DLT hat. We're working in Lake County, California right now, and we'll be back up there in the fall again. We were invited to come to
Sonoma
County. I did some exploration there and visited with folks there. Their building permits are 75 cents on the 25 cents on the dollar for the finished value of the house. Building permits can run $60,000, $70,000. Building permits. And they wonder why. MDS has got nothing to do with that. That's a ripoff. We're going to go somewhere where the dollars go to the folks. We walked away from that one politely, but we walked away from that one. The master plan that Robin talked about in Calaveras County, building after the fires, they accepted a master plan. We had one architect stamped version of our 3-bedroom house, presented it, they accepted it. We could apply for permits off of that plan.
That's it.
For Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, Mrs. Wilson, just keep going off that one master plan. Lake County said, individual set of plans, a roll of drawings that big around, that thick, for every individual homeowner, architect fees, whatever. We're doing that. We've been invited to Mendocino County, just up from Sonoma, for next season. We're probably not going to get there.
All in lovely California.
But Mendocino County said, we'll do the master plan to draw us out of Lake County where we have to do the individuals. It's by jurisdiction, by city. In this hurricane, you're talking Houston, Galveston, metro areas all the way out to Bloomington and Refugio and little towns where there are no permits, there's no inspections, there's no nothing. And I'll tell you another angle on that. We're building in Bloomington right now. We're finishing houses. In fact, we're dedicating the first houses this coming week in Bloomington. There are no permits, no inspections, no nothing. We can do whatever we wanted to do. We hate it. We want inspections. We want someone looking over our shoulder. We know we're going to build good quality, but when you don't have a check, you can get lazy. We want that inspection.
Some accountability.
Yeah. Sheila.
I was just going to add to the long-term recovery teams, don't be afraid to ask. Our county today is still waiving our developmental permit fees. We pay for our inspections and it's included in the budget for those homes. But we have been fortunate that the commissioners have voted each time and they've waived our fees for us.
And many counties that we deal with
Yeah.
refuse to do that. We propose that. We're kind of an outsider, so we don't have much traction. We suggest that to the county. You're going to get folks back on the tax rolls, paying taxes into your county rolls quicker if we can build houses quicker. You make it difficult to build, you put off your tax, and when they put off gathering taxes, they go deeper in the hole, and then they raise the permit fees to offset it.
Well, yeah, and I think sometimes San Diego waives them also. But I think sometimes that a community may have to put pressure, even if it's vocal, even if it's in the media or picketing. If it's what's best for your survivors, then that may be sometimes what you have to do. Even though I'm not sure y'all do that in Texas, but that's what I'd be doing.
Well, in Baytown, we even have the assistant city manager and the city manager on our board of directors for our disaster recovery whenever we set it up, knowing that we wanted that connection. And we also have a county commissioner for the neighboring county. Just so we have no cost, if we have any snafus whatsoever, they step in, it's handled, we're done.
Nice.
And as you're building your budget, do you roll in things like appliances? Obviously, HVAC is going to be there, that's part of the house. But different communities, we work in communities where they say put in electric baseboard heat and window air units. It's way cheaper, and it's not central air. Other folks insist central air. Again, your municipalities, your local codes, your local practices are going to dictate a lot of that. We don't have a suggested plan for that. But you need to be thinking about that as you go. And back to every house you plan needs to be safe, sanitary.
And I will also say, you guys I don't think will be in this position because I think you're short on case management relative to the size of your disasters. But our case managers in San Diego, they actually go out and get bid proposals, even though that work may not be being done by them. It could end up being done by the Mennonites, but at least it gives us a ballpark number to know what we're dealing with relative to the unmet needs case. Or if a new well has to be drilled or a septic system, our case managers actually get the bids along with the survivor. If the survivor is capable, we also ask them to be part of that.
Next, little thing for you to be aware of, codes and inspections. And like I just mentioned, some spots here in Texas are nothing, zero, and all the way through, I'm sure, Metro Houston and some of the metro areas are going to be a lot different story, much stricter. Do you know your codes? Do you know the inspection schedule? And who does that lodge with? Your construction manager or someone on the committee? I see Beth nodding yes.
We've built a portfolio for all of our counties and municipalities of the different codes and inspections and where to go for permits.
Yeah. Just from Rockport to Refugio, we're seeing a big difference. I mean,
Yeah.
Rockport's pretty tough.
Fort Aransas.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, no. I'm done.
I think with Harvey, what's also making it kind of interesting is down along the coast, you had a lot of like the wind aspects. So up like in Fort Bend or Houston Harris County, we're having to deal with floodplain regulations now because it was a lot of our rivers. I mean, we had flash flooding, but we also had a ton of river flooding. And so now dealing with NFIP, floodplain regulations, and how that plays into it. So whereas the whole idea of being substantially damaged versus not substantially damaged, and do you have to elevate or mitigate from there adds another layer into that. But I know y'all down along the coast have your own, challenges, especially with like the Texas windstorm, insurance and inspectors on that. So you're right, not just knowing which community you're in and knowing their things, but also, okay, what is the nature of that disaster and how does that impact the repair or the rebuild? If you have to worry about flooding or not.
Yeah. Disasters bring that about. They bring back a new awakening. Nina can talk about floodplain mapping changing. The prior was this way. It's been fine for generations. New awareness. Here's where the water actually went. We can now mark the lines. Remap changes insurance. It changes homeowners' lives. You can't come back where you used to be. You have to watch that. all the various kinds of codes and inspections, again, it depends on your location, and we've got the whole spectrum here. I'm sure, I shouldn't say I'm sure, I would imagine Houston has some local codes that might, local specs to their code that might override a county or a state or the IRC, International Residential Code, Universal Code, whatever you want to call it. You need to be aware before you let folks start building in your community what the code restrictions are and how they apply to folks and that they're building to them. And then on top of that, there are other sub-level codes that come into energy saving. In California, it's Title 24. And it is hairy, and you have to have it for every individual home, and it is a pain.
Right, you can't have someone out collecting windows to go into their house trying to save money because they may not be the right energy efficiency, for example.
Every home, to do Title 24 on the energy conservation, every home, you have to present a site plan that shows the orientation of the house to the north, south, east, west, and predominant winds, elevation above sea level, because the higher you go, the different amount of solar gain, whatever, and then the placement of windows on that house, and it's dictated as to how much energy loss you're going to have. And so you might have to turn the house 10 degrees in order to hit the Title 24 specs, and an architect has to stamp every one of those. How many here know what WUI is? Got one, good.
Not me.
That's California, by the way.
I don't know what it is.
Wildlife Urban
Oh,
Interface.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Believe it or
acronym.
not, you got to be able to know if the deer and the turkeys and the pheasants are going to come through your property and how your new house is going to affect it. Yeah. Be aware of all the possible things that are going to affect how your folks rebuild.
I'm moving to Texas.
Who's responsible for that compliance? Is it the volunteer builders? Is it your construction manager? Is it the chair of the Long-Term Recovery Committee? Someone in your group needs to know who is responsible for that compliance.
Because do you have to have that compliance even if there's no permit required?
Or is it the homeowner? Yeah. Who is responsible? And you need to know that and have that as you're building. And then scheduling, inspection, the inspection scheduling and the management of the inspections. And this, I'll come back to the MDS side, is very critical to know who's doing that and who's responsible. When you have volunteers coming in, especially the weekly volunteers that come to do their good work for a week and then they're going to leave, if you have a group of folks show up and you've got 2 houses or 3 houses underway and you're waiting inspections on all of them and you can't drive a nail until Tuesday afternoon, meaningful work for the volunteer just went in the dumpster. They want to swing hammers Monday morning. That's why they took a week's vacation to come and give of their time. So managing the inspections and making sure that things are flowing. It doesn't have to be today. If the inspection's coming in 3 days, your builders then know to start something else and keep moving. But you have to have that schedule and know.
So in addition to that, then, I guess in other states, here we run into the problem about like if a group's coming in and they've got like, electricians and plumbers,
Yeah.
HVAC, but you have to have somebody with a local license to kind of work under their license so you can get permits. Is that, that's what we've got, at least down here. Is that a common occurrence as well?
That is as scattered as a shotgun blast. It's everywhere. Some municipalities, some counties, some jurisdictions, let's say jurisdictions, insist that volunteers can't touch the wires. Volunteers can't touch the plumbing. Other places, if you're the local plumber and you're willing to sign permits, the volunteers can do it as long as the county knows that you inspected and signed for it. And it's everything in between. Some places have no requirements. And again, the volunteers, and not just MDS, volunteers from any organization, they probably do have plumbers and electricians that can come do it. But we all, and I'll speak for the others, would kind of prefer to have someone look over our shoulder. We got pretty good electricians and pretty good plumbers, but we kind of like to have that accountability.
Yeah, and they did plumbing and electrical for us in San Diego, these guys did. And almost every one of our rebuilds is done as an owner builder. So the owner is actually signing for the permit. And they're legally allowed to do that because these guys are their subcontractor volunteers. And so that worked for us in San Diego, and it may work in some of the communities.
Have any of you ever seen this? It's a book called Code Check Complete. I had never seen it until about 60 days ago. I wish I'd known about it 10 years ago. It's redone every year. It's about 90, you can have one that's 5 years old and it's going to be 95% accurate. It's a complete, it's not quite kindergarten level, but it's the coolest thing. It's got color coding and there's electrical, HVAC, plumbing, and building. And you want to know about wiring, you go over here to the, there's plumbing as the orange. It has pictures of how the plumbing should appear if it's done properly. It has the word, the verbiage of the code. You can read it, but then it shows you a picture of what a properly installed hot water heater should look like to be per code. How do you put the steps on the side of the house? It has a picture of a hammer. This is a skylight. But it says how the skylight is to be flashed to be per code. Every last step. This is a wonderful book. It's on Amazon. If you want to take a photo of this book later and put it in your phone so you're reminded to get every LTRC, someone should have one of these. I'm going to preach this book because it's made my life
Because
immensely much easier.
guaranteed someone's going to come in and ask
Well,
how,
when my project director
Yeah.
calls me from LaGrange and says, hey, we're stuck on how to attach this and this, I got a book now. I'm just going to say, you need to, and I've got the right answer, not just my opinion, but the right answer. So get this book, and it's on. I looked this morning. It's on Amazon. This is the 2017 version. 2018 is out there, brand new. It's like $36 or $39. They have used ones for $24. So, how much? Oh, he found it already. He's ordering it.
perfect.
Yeah, you guys can just all order that right now. That's been a really cool thing. Permits and drawings, architectural requirements. Do you need a certified architect in your community? I can tell you Refugio doesn't. Does Rockport? Yes.
Oh, it has to be an architect? Oh, just an
Engineer
engineer
and/or
stamp.
architect. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, it's I don't think I stuck engineer on there. I should have, but engineering is one of. Do
Structural.
the drawings need to be stamped, and at what level do they need to be stamped? State, county, city.
Fire?
It's all over the place, folks. You need to know in your LTRC, the folks you're serving, what they need to match. And that's as easy as making a visit up to the county office or your city building inspector and sitting down and spending an hour, and they'll tell you what you need to do. And then the big question, who pulls the permits? Your construction coordinator, manager, whatever title you give them. Does MDS, do the volunteer builders pull the permits? We have. We don't like to. Homeowner,
Yeah.
who's responsible for that?
Well, and I mean, and if you have a capable homeowner, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to, because they should be involved in their recovery.
But you should try to be consistent with how that's done. But that, again, it's a decision that needs to be made at the LTRC level. Who, how, and where are we going to do this? Usually, though, often, the homeowner ultimately needs to sign it, but maybe the construction manager goes and does all the legwork for Widow Jones, who is befuddled by all of this, and brings it to her and sits down there and explains to Widow Jones why you need, what this all is, and here's where you need to sign so we can build your house.
We talked about
We talked
master
about
plans.
master plans, whether they, and again, I don't know how that's going to apply across Texas. So far, where MDS is building, we're not running into that, but different municipalities, different jurisdictions have different ways on that. Funds management. Who does your funds management during the construction phase? Number one, this is Robin.
I did that part too. So the one thing that was really great, and we were able to have sales tax waived in California. Chris, didn't you have that too?
If you have a tax exempt.
Yeah, tax exempt certification,
Who has?
your long-term recovery.
The LTRC?
The 501c3.
Yes.
Yeah, so our 501c3 requested and got this exemption. And so anything that was specifically for a survivor, so all building material, we did not have to pay any sales tax, huge savings in the long run. So that's a big plus.
Usually your volunteer builder group will not be 501c3, will not be tax exempt in your area.
Yes.
If it's one of the national groups, I should be careful. If it's one of the national groups, they will not.
Yeah.
MDS, this time we waived that rule because of a very unusual circumstance where a major funder provided us with a couple $1 million so that we can be buying the lumber for the communities and taking that burden off of you for the first couple of years. When we realized we're going to be spending $2 million, and you're looking at what, 10% sales tax, it's $200,000, it's 4 more houses at $50,000 a lick. It was worth our time to get a tax exempt.
To get the exemption,
status.
yes.
This is the first time. We just don't do that, and most of them don't.
But then you'll have it now, right? Yeah, now you have it, because we got ours in 2003 and it still exists today.
But it also takes, our home office in PA has an attitude of it takes management then to, each tax exempt certificate is different, and so someone has to manage those, and we don't want to do that.
$200,000 though, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Who controls the funds during the building phase? Have you talked about it?
Long-term recovery?
Do you have decisions? There are many options. Again,
I want to know if anyone has an opinion about that, or if they have had that scenario yet. Are any of you managing long-term recovery funds? And are you, and you can just nod your head, are you managing through the long-term recovery through the 501c3? Okay, okay. So you actually, so at the unmet needs table, you actually have a person at the unmet needs table that is handling dollars directly. Oh, interesting. Well, I'm not going to get sidetracked in case management and unmet needs, but I'd have a lot to say about that. But, well, no, just quickly, on occasion we have an organization when we've had a disaster that they absolutely, it is against their organization's rules to fund money over for the client to the long-term recovery. So then we actually tell them, this is where we need you to put your 20K to the contractor that did the well or the septic or whatever that might be, or we need you to buy these building materials. So that might be what you're talking about.
And you get
part of it.
you get multiple combinations. We have an active project right now in Pine Ridge, South Dakota, Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, where our friends at Salvation Army gave us a nice grant, enough to build 2 homes. But the way they do it is reimbursement by invoice. So MDS is going to town and buying the materials, saving the invoices, copying them, sending them off to our friends at Salvation Army, and they're reimbursing us. That's cool. One of the other grantors, I think it's UMCOR, gave the money to the LTRC and insists that they actually pay the bill. And so MDS goes to town and buys the lumber, charges it to, we open an account for the LTRC at the lumber yard, and they pay it. And the third funder there gave the money directly to us to spend. So,
and we were so trusting of MDS that I got them all an American Express card, and they were able to just go buy their materials like that. And each guy got a card. I had about 50 of them, and it worked out really well too.
After Katrina in New Orleans, Catholic Charities was the major funder. Catholic Charities gave us credit cards. Even me as a weekly volunteer, when I got there Monday, I was always a crew leader. They gave me a credit card Sunday night when I got there and said, "This is your money." And I said, "Where do I give the receipts? Don't worry about it."
Oh, well,
it was a non-receipt system.
I expected receipts.
This is all over the place, folks. And when you're managing donated dollars, you need to be really, really good about it. Really careful to. Back to our just previous discussion on grants and accounting for the money. Listen to the expectation of the person who gave you the money. If someone gives you $250,000 and says, "Here, just no strings attached," good for you. You don't have to keep the paper trail. It's probably best to keep the paper trail on everything exactly the same so you can report them all out. but listen to whoever gave you the money and meet their needs so they'll give you more money later. Has anybody ever had a local nonprofit step up to manage the funds? I see a couple heads nodding.
Yeah.
Arlene?
Yeah,
Yeah.
our community foundation was our fiscal sponsor for 2 years.
Okay.
Our food pantry, our emergency food pantry in Joplin, Missouri was our fiscal agent.
And
So grant money came in to that organization, and then how did it work then? Did the lumberyard send the bill to them?
That's in our unmet needs committee report or presentation tomorrow.
Oh, okay, okay.
Or I can tell you now, either one.
No,
We'll wait.
We'll wait, yeah. So anyway, this is all about, we're not really giving you any answers in this presentation.
Just giving you some
We're
things
showing
to
you all
think
the
about.
options, and just every time, after every slide, I'm going to say, you need to pay attention and figure out how you're going to do this.
Yeah. Well, if you think about the big scope of building a bunch of houses and paying a bunch of bills, and having like your local 501c3, a small, like your food pantry, do something, they don't really realize the magnitude to which is going to happen probably. And when all of a sudden they're paying contractor bills or lumber bills, and then they're going, well, do I actually know if that lumber really got to the survivor's house that it was supposed to? There's all these things, and that eventually, if you're not a 501c3, ultimately, I think a lot of times pushes someone into a 501c3
And
because of that.
we have seen that. That can be really interesting to
Oh, the homeowner running the money?
give them the money.
Oh,
to pay for
Lord.
the bills.
Oh, wow.
Hope they don't go buy a new bass boat. Yes?
I'm in Port Arthur in Jefferson County. We have a lot of older homes that people want repaired. And my question is, how and where in the case management process, and we've got 3 different groups doing case management, we're still trying to form an LTRC, are people helped to figure out whether they should rebuild or repair?
Oh,
Or whether they should wait for a buyout in a new house?
that's going to be you.
If the buyout is available, we have that in Jamestown.
We're waiting on a buyout program.
Yeah.
We don't have that yet.
You really, your hands are tied. You don't want to waste money doing something you should do if that is going to come.
So that points out that the case managers, one group is telling me that they have construction people that are going to go out with the case managers to help assess those situations.
That's fine to get the work done and do the assessments and get the estimates and be ready, but you can't pull a trigger if you're waiting on,
Buyouts.
buyout.
Can I interject too? We kind of have that same issue. We know that
Yeah, we want to remind folks to use the mic, please. I know it's hard to wait, but it really is good for the video. Thank you.
One of the issues that we have in our community is that we did, because it was the flood situation, so there are some houses that we did repairs to early on, that there's the option there that those families could get buyouts. If that happens, kind of the way we try to view it is we set a cap on how much we were going to invest monetarily into those repairs. But, so the flood happened in September,
Yeah.
well, 1st of September, they've been out of homes. And then, so now we have them back in the home that may get bought out, which is, we're kind of okay with that because we don't have temporary housing in our area.
Right.
If you
So
put
at some
five
point-
or 6 or 7,000 and you get them
Right.
home for 6 months to a year to 18 months before they ultimately lose it, it's
Makes good
it's
sense.
trade out for
It could be
rent.
18 It could be up to 18 months, even
Yeah.
24 months
Yeah.
before those buyouts.
Really, all you've
So
lost is an equivalent to rent money anyway, and they're back in their own home for a while.
Yep, that makes good sense.
We need to go, I'm getting the hook from Chris here, but go ahead, yeah.
I would just say, to me, this is the importance of looping in local government into your long-term recovery group, because if they, in mind, are planning that we're gonna designate this area for buyouts or whatnot, if they have a master plan in their mind because there was flooding or just, wildfires, to kind of know what is the intent of government for an area before you start investing money in that when they're like, there's no
Right.
point to do that. So
Right.
looping in local government, I feel like.
And
is
maybe
important.
even not just local, but make sure you're talking to FEMA and the feds as well.
you have to remember that those are voluntary buyouts. So they are not required buyouts.
Yeah.
They're voluntary.
And
It
core,
depends on the funding source.
Okay, so she's saying that it's temporary, I mean, it's not necessarily required buyouts, is what you're saying.
The buyouts that are coming with this,
The buyouts that are coming, it is my understanding that these are going to be strictly voluntary.
I've
So-
seen some that are mandatory, so.
Well, I'm,
Yeah.
like in our area, on these houses that we're doing, they're gonna be voluntary
No,
buyouts.
understood. It depends on the funding source.
Right, okay, okay. Other decisions to go quick, a couple of slides here. Who's going to do the work? You as the LTRC committee do you want to hire local contractors? And if you do hire contractors and spend money that way, you've got a screening selection, you should have some protocols for who you're going to employ, not just Jim Bob who saw the disaster come and put a sticker on the side of his truck and put a ladder on the roof, and all of a sudden he's a contractor. Pay attention there. You're going to use volunteers. We put up several names of folks that do the longer term, that stay for the long term. There are a lot more. Nina has been working on a list of repair groups, rebuild and repair groups. They'll be on our website, right?
right.
Expectation management comes up over and over again, and it's really big here. Yes.
She wants to take a picture.
This is not all of them by any means.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. This is the biggest thing you've got. It's the most sensitive spot you've got. And it's where your job is the hardest, is expectation management. Being honest, being straightforward, giving hope, but not false hope. How you do that is that there's 1,000+ ways to do that.
And would you say most of that falls on the case manager? As far as getting the house built, them being careful?
That's often the most
Face-to-face?
Face-to-face, yeah.
Face-to-face?
But ultimately, and this is a caution for those that raised their hand, the LTRC chairs, everything still points back to you, of the case manager. If the homeowner feels the case manager betrayed them, they're coming to you.
Yeah,
Chris, is that fair? Okay.
that's correct.
The builders, we've said this in about every front, and here's another place.
Don't be afraid.
You had to tell them, what, wait a year?
They waited a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't tell them to wait a year. I said, I'll let you know when we need you. And it was a year.
And the other big one is public press, social media. Many of you have already had a few snipes or attacks, and there will be more. The beauty of social media is we can communicate, we can share good news really fast, and when it gets ugly real fast. Just be honest, be clean, be prepared, and you're still going to get,
Yeah.
it's still coming.
Yep, and then there's a likelihood that the repaired, rebuilt home may be better than the pre-disaster home, based on the need for safe and sanitary.
Yes.
And that does happen.
And it's an interesting dialogue we have with our volunteers. They come in, they look at the house that we're, and I expect more on a rebuild, more on a repair than a rebuild, but they look at the house, we can tell that this house wasn't that much. And they challenge us as leaders, why are we putting these people in a better position than they were before? It's a concern. It goes to meaningful work. Be prepared to address it. Quick. Who's got the mic?
The other part of expectation that ties back to your last point is depending on the rebuilder, it may be a lot less than what they had. It may not be,
Yep.
Nice molding. It may just be sheetrock and just meet that standard of functional. And they may not have the time to take it all the way to what it was before.
Right.
If so, then that expectation needs to be laid out clearly up in front as well.
And it also goes the other way. We've helped a lot of folks who, prior to the storm, elderly folks, fixed income, Social Security, minimal income, but they had paid for, they owned and had paid for and were able to pay the taxes on a 3,000 square foot brick home. It got taken away. They had 5 bedrooms, the kids could come and stay with them. This was their life, and they were managing before the storm. It was okay, but they do have a fixed income, and they can't afford to build a new house. MDS comes in and builds them a little 3-bedroom ranch-style, 1,100-foot house. They feel like they're going backwards. They're getting a very nice, new, solid, sanitary, safe, secure, energy-efficient home, but it's a downgrade from what they had
What they
before.
had.
But it's reality, and we can't offer them anything more.
He's got something. Come on up here. I'm going to give him on the
Yeah,
mic.
here you
So one thing that we ran into...
Name and who you're with.
Oh, sorry. My name's Trey. I'm with the BR3T, so we service Hayes, Caldwell, Guadalupe, and Blanco counties. We did have a construction supervisor. We chose to hire one, and I meant to say this earlier, but if you are running into an issue with salaries, be creative. We wrote up a grant, and we were able to cover half the salary for our construction supervisor, and that helped us out, and we got it for 3 months because of that. So always feel free to reach out and think outside the box, write a grant, get a construction supervisor. It was a big help for us. And on this topic, it's really big that if you do have a construction super, that he also signs off on any contracts that you sign with the homeowners, because you can have a scope of work on a house, and you can have an ideal situation, but that contractor needs to get in the house before you sign anything. Because we've had situations where, okay, we have a cost estimate for family endeavors, we have a scope of work that we want to do, but we get into the house after the homeowner's already signed off on their contract, and we say, we can't replace this bathtub, it's a cast iron tub, we can't get it out the door, and that homeowner expects us to put in a walk-in shower. So make sure if you are going to do these contractors, or these contracts, that you have a contractor that signs off along with that. It's important.
Thank
All
you.
parties. Last thing, follow the money. Pay close attention to this. If you've got folks elbowing their way to the front because they want to have some control of the money, throw the flag. There's something stinky there. If they need overhead expenses to manage your funds, no. There are people out there who will do it
For free.
Zero cost. Anybody that wants to charge you for helping you is not your friend, generally speaking. Again, exceptions to every rule.
Every
generally
rule.
speaking.
Yep. All right, are we done?
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much.